Trophic levels. Decomposers. Decomposers are heterotrophs that break down dead animals and organic material. They decompose their food, as their name says, which is essential to an ecosystem. This is because without them plants would not get essential nutrients, and waste and dead animals would pile up. An example of a decomposer is an earthworm, who breaks down dead plants which other plants use, and leaves a casting when it eats, which is also very useful to the soil as a fertilizer. Another example of a decomposer is fungi. Since fungi do not have chlorophyll, they cannot make their own food. So to compensate for this, they release enzymes that decompose dead animals and plants for them. They then absorb the nutrients from the dead animal or plant. Primary producers. Primary producers are autotrophs that convert energy around them, such as sunlight energy and carbon dioxide, into usable food energy for their own usage through photosynthesis, converting sunlight into energy, or chemosynthesis, converting inorganic materials into organic energy. Since they are producers, they do not eat other organisms and make their own food, which is useful to heterotrophs who cannot make their own food, as producers are an energy source that can be passed down the energy pyramid. An example of a primary producer could be a tree. Trees are very useful to the environment, as they provide clean air, shelter, and a food source for other organisms. Primary consumers. Primary consumers or herbivores are heterotrophs that eat primary producers and are eaten by secondary consumers and sometimes tertiary consumers. Primary consumers are useful in the environment in the sense that they eat plants for energy, so other organisms can get that energy from them, in which was passed on from the plant. An example of a primary consumer is a cow. A cow's main diet consists of grass, and it is eaten by bobcats, wolves, coyotes, cougars, lynx, humans, and bears. A cow's manure is also very useful for making compost, which is a reason why it is used so much in the farming industry. Secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are heterotrophs that eat primary consumers and sometimes primary producers. They are also eaten by tertiary consumers. The job of a secondary consumer is similar to a primary consumer, but is also quite useful, as it eats primary consumers which have energy from primary producers, and so when the secondary consumer is eaten, the energy from the primary producer passes on to the tertiary consumer. An example of a secondary consumer could be a bird, more specifically a sparrow. A sparrow's diet mostly consists of seeds, and sometimes insects. They are prey to many larger birds such as the owl or hawk, and their eggs have a 30% mortality rate from other birds, animals, or some random guy craving unborn babies. Tertiary consumers. Tertiary consumers are heterotrophs that can eat everything listed before, as they have no natural predators and are at the top of their food chain. When tertiary consumers die, their bodies are eaten by decomposers, restarting the entire cycle all over again. An example of a tertiary consumer could be a bear. Bears have a varied diet which includes berries, fish, fungi, roots, deer, and seeds. During late summer and early fall, bears face hyperphagia, which is basically a time of excessive hunger. They do this to prepare for hibernation, which can last up to 7.5 months. Another example of a tertiary consumer is a human. Humans are often considered the ultimate consumer, as they eat virtually everything in existence, such as alligators and cockroaches. On top of this, however, they still feel the incredible need to invade and destroy other organisms' territories, to make room for their giant blocks. Humans often live in tribes known as countries. Each country has their own human that leads their tribe and makes important decisions. Sometimes, however, tribes do not agree and decide that killing each other is the answer. So instead of using their advanced technology to create something useful, they decide to make tools that makes killing each other easier. These events are known as wars and are being learned by children in juvenile prisons called school.